the first question we got, which is from Carrie, who's
Okay.
asking, my 4-month-old sleeps through the night in her bed, sometimes 10 hours straight through the night, but she'll only nap for 30 to 45 minutes independently. She'll nap for over an hour if I hold her, but how can I train her to nap in her bed? The first 2 naps of the day, I can put her down somewhat sleepy but awake, and she'll go back to sleep. But by the third nap, she's so cranky that every time I put her down, even while she's calm and drowsy, she starts screaming and I end up holding her for the entire nap. Are short naps normal at this age? And am I teaching her bad habits by holding her through the nap?
Okay. Great
A
question.
lot in there. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately what it comes down to is her naps are kind of cat nappy. And so she's kind of doing whatever she needs to get by, which is holding her. And then of course, by the end of the day, she's cranky. So at 4 months, we are still looking at a pretty large sleep need for babies. We're looking at generally 12 to 14, sometimes 15 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period. So when we look at sleep, we look at it in a 24-hour period. That includes overnight sleep and naps. Generally speaking, at 4 months, you're looking at 10 to 12 hours of sleep overnight. That may or may not include 1 or 2 feedings, depending on the child. And then for naps, you're really looking at about 3 naps. And the goal is for the first 2 naps to be at least an hour long in order to be restorative. Now, if she's only napping for 30 or 45 minutes independently, it's not surprising that by the 3rd nap, she is cranky. So what happens is throughout the day, when a baby is catnapping and not getting restorative naps, their body fills with stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine. These hormones make a baby cranky. They make babies fight sleep. And they make it more difficult for them to fall asleep and stay asleep. So it's not surprising at all that the 3rd nap is a complete disaster. It's usually the trickiest nap of the day, regardless of whether the child is sleeping well, because the thing is that the first nap and the second nap actually fall on sort of natural sleep rhythms throughout the day, sort of dips in the cortisol. The 3rd nap is kind of one of those random things that we throw in there to get your baby to take off a little bit of the edge before bedtime, so you're not putting your baby to bed at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so the issue here is, yeah, it sounds like this baby has a dependency on being held for naps. If they're able to sleep well being held, that means that they have sort of a dependency on that needs to be addressed. So the way that I would work on something like this with a client is to ensure that this child is on an age-appropriate schedule. At 4 months, again, it's so hard to say like exactly what it's going to be because every child's slightly different. But at 4 months, I typically recommend the first nap to be around 8:15, 8:30. Second nap around 12:15, 12:30, and then the 3rd nap, because daytime sleep sort of like baby gets more and more overtired throughout the day. I usually recommend the 3rd nap begin as soon as an hour and a half after waking from that second nap. So it's not a by the clock. It's not like a by the clock thing. It's more like, okay, we want to get this baby down within an hour and a half of that second nap, especially if that second nap is really short. Then I would have this person implement what I call crib hour. And basically how that works is you decide on what sleep training method you want to use. And it's any range of methods. And if the baby wakes prematurely, less than an hour at the 30 or 40 mark, you start to implement that method until it has been a full hour since your baby fell asleep. So say your baby falls asleep at 8:15, they wake up at 9 o'clock, you implement your method from 9 to 9:15 just to see if you can help the baby fall back asleep independently. If the baby doesn't fall back asleep, you get the baby up, and then you might have to adjust the next nap time because that nap was short. You don't want to risk them becoming overtired again. And so this takes time. Daytime sleep consolidation typically occurs sometime between 3.5 and 6 months. Some children are just bad nappers inherently. No matter what we do, they're going to be bad nappers. But I would say that 90% of babies, we can get napping pretty well, getting at least an hour for the first and second nap. You know, if we are consistent with naps. Naps take longer for training. I hate the term training, but they just take longer because we don't have the same sleep drive that we do overnight. We don't have melatonin in play there. Again, it's when the cortisol drops, and that can vary by child, and that's why there's sort of nuances there. But I would definitely consider your method, consider the timing of the naps, and definitely work on getting her down so that she's not requiring you to hold her for over an hour. I mean, the good news is that she will sleep for over an hour, so that means she will eventually sleep over an hour in her own bed. And for the third nap, again, a lot of people struggle with this. I often tell my parents to go for a walk, you know, take a baby out in a stroller fall, you know, they fall asleep in the stroller, that kind of nap. In general, we want to avoid naps in motion or naps being held, not only because, well, for being held, it's unsafe. Generally speaking, the AAP recommends against it because of positional asphyxiation. But aside from that, it's not as restorative. If you think about us traveling, get on a plane, it's a 6-hour flight, say you sleep the whole time, you get to your destination and you're still kind of tired. It's because part of the brain is partially awake. Your body is protecting you, so your brain is protecting you, so you're kind of awake. The same is true for a baby, in that if they're in motion, it's not as restorative. Your body is not completely shutting down and getting that restorative sleep because they're in motion. But for the third nap, being that it's not necessarily like a super restorative nap, that's what I typically recommend. Go for a walk in the baby carrier, you know, things like that. It's generally, that one is a cat nap no matter what. So I wouldn't even bother attempting to put her in a crib for that one. It's
Okay.
time to get out of the house.
That is helpful. Awesome.